Good afternoon, my name is Tom Bell and I'm Director of Music here at St James Cathedral, and as always it is a genuine pleasure to welcome you to St James to share some music together. It's possibly the favourite hour of my week are our Tuesday organ recitals, and this week is no less so than any of the other. In fact it's especially so because we welcome back an old friend who I've known for a long time, one of the first musicians I met in Canada, Dawes, and we're also welcoming him back to St James Cathedral. He knows the instrument like the back of his hand, so we're in for a real treat. And he's also playing just a fabulous program. Chris very carefully curates his programs to provide a theme around the music, which he will explain about halfway through the program itself. So we are simply delighted to welcome Dawes back to St James Cathedral. Please join me in welcoming Chris, giving him a rapturous round of applause, please. Thank you.
Names to our children, we think deeply about their past and uncertain future. That future into which the name we give them will bear them. My parents gave me the name Christopher, which everyone calls me Chris, but I use Christopher professionally, and sometimes it needs to be shortened, particularly back in the days of the column inch and the newspaper ad. I don't mind this in principle, but it might surprise you to learn how often Christopher is incorrectly shortened to Christ. I find myself addressed by the name Christ in emails all the time, and also have seen myself so called on posters, newspaper ads, and even once on a flashing marquee sign. Well, names are important for many reasons. And Johann Sebastian Bach was not the first composer to figure out you could spell things using the alphabetic note names, but he famously included his signature, the letters B-A-C-H, in his final composition, The Art of Fugue. Bach's example inspired other composers, first of all, to pay tribute to him by writing pieces based on B-A-C-H. But eventually they began composing works dedicated to other tributees. And the piece you've just heard by Quebec composer Denis Bédard is dedicated to his teacher, his much beloved organ teacher, Claude LAVOIE. Denis wrote this in 1994 as the test piece for the Concours d'Orgue de Québec, the Quebec organ competition, and it's a free set of variations on the 6 letters of Lavoie's name. There is a certain sorcery that composers used, by the way, to specify notes like L and V that don't actually correspond to note names, but that's a bit more of a complicated process that I'll tell you about later. Now, however, I will mention another name, French composer Jéhan Alain. He was a skilled motorcyclist. He became a dispatch rider in the 8th Motorized Armored Division of the French Army. On June 17th, 1940, Philippe Pétain, who was a World War I hero and French general who became leader of the collaborationist Vichy regime, announced the request of an armistice with victorious Germany. The cadets of the École de Cavalerie de Saumur, of which Alain was one, declined the order to withdraw and prepared to defend the crossings of the Loire River. A few days later, on the 20th of June, Jéhan Alain, who was assigned to reconnoiter on his motorcycle near the village of Petit Pays, encountered a group of German soldiers. Alain was alone. In a garden near a railway viaduct, his retreat was cut off. Rather than surrender, he opened fire, and a fierce exchange followed. Eventually, a burst of bullets found him, and Alain fell dead at the age of 29. That day, France lost not just a brave citizen, but also an incredibly gifted musician, a complex, creative, and devoted husband and father of 3, and the composer of some of the organ's most unique and beautiful music. I will play 2 pieces of his now. The first, a strangely titled Profane Prélude that actually has nothing to do with profanity, but rather is pointedly a piece of secular music, not designed specifically for religious purposes. The second piece I will play is his best-known work, Litanies. Alain wrote in description of that last piece, "When the Christian soul no longer finds new words in its distress to implore God's mercy, it repeats incessantly the same invocation with a vehement faith. Reason has reached its limits. Alone, faith pursues its ascension." I think of those words often when I consider Alain's final moments in sacrifice. What would become known as the Battle of Saumur between the advancing Nazis and the resisting young soldiers in the days following Alain's sacrifice can be seen as the beginning of what we now call the French resistance. As Vichy France collaborated with the Nazis and the rest of the country was quickly overrun. Men and women like Jéhan Alain cared enough to resist the victorious enemy, both without and within their lands, and made a crucial difference in prevailing along with the Allies against a more powerful foe. With authoritarian governments cropping up in various places around the world, including unexpected ones, I think Alain's example speaks to our time. Maurice Duruflé, his older colleague, though, wrote one of these tribute pieces, just as we started our program with today. His Prélude et Fugue sur le nom d'Alain was written in 1942, 2 years after his younger colleague's death. It's a spiritual descendant of the Germanic compositions mentioned above that monumented the great Bach through spelling his name. But as you hear, and will hear in a moment, in the prelude, he also touchingly quotes the melody and harmony from Alain's best-known composition, Litanies. It's that same melody which you heard many, many times in that performance. Let's keep in mind Alain's example. If we serve as the resistance, or as it rules in our hearts.
Thank you so much, Chris, on behalf of Chris, on behalf of all of us for a simply fabulous recital. We've enjoyed it from the first to the last notes. Thank you for your talent, for your time, and showing us again what this instrument can do. It's just an absolute pleasure. Next week's recital is given by another wonderful recitalist from St Luke's, Burlington, Jennifer Goodine, so that's also one not to be missed. Details of a very busy few months at St James Cathedral are on the reverse side of the programme, including the organ recitals. We have a music open house on St Cecilia's Day, November the 22nd. It's a Saturday. You are most welcome to listen to another recital, to sing with the choirs. And if you have children, do bring them to the Children's Community Choir, which is growing great guns at the moment. So again, it's an absolute pleasure to see you. We look forward to seeing you in the forthcoming weeks. But can we give Chris another very warm round of thanks and appreciation for his truly fabulous music making. Thank you very much.